Well, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Jason Levine. Thank you so much for joining me this Friday for a masterclass where today we're going to be talking about some of the highlights of the recent Premiere Pro 23.2 and 23.1 releases, primarily focusing on a couple of features specifically that many of you have been asking for the last couple of months. Based around working with log and HDR footage, specifically iPhone HDR footage directly in Premiere Pro, as well as the ability to now convert caption blocks into graphic blocks. And what that's going to allow you to do is effectively apply all the different types of animations and effects if you want to get creative with your captions rather than just having standard captions. And then I'll showcase a couple of other little smaller things along the way. A couple of cool things actually. That are, well, make life a lot easier, especially if you're doing new installs or migrating from previous installs or kind of want to clear out all your caches. A couple things there that are just a little faster, a little more efficient with some nice options that you didn't really have front and center before. So I'll be excited to kind of take you through some of that. As always, we're coming to you live across multiple networks, and I'm just pulling up my chats here. There's some little bit of a delay. So thank you for joining us on YouTube, Behance, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn as well. So great to see you. Thank you so much. And I can see we've got Stephanie, Derek, Sean, Melinda, Gino, Michael, Mike, Gabe, Watson. How are you doing? Great to see you all. Okay, and if I look, I'm sorry, but the camera's framed a little bit differently today. If you've been following me on Twitter, and I said in a tweet that my 14-plus year Herman Miller Aeron chair finally bit the bullet. I was reminded, I've actually had it almost 20 years, actually. So it served its purpose. It was kind of going for a while, and it really collapsed in on me the other day. I was not injured. But so I'm in this other chair. You can see just here a standard little kitchen chair here. It's not quite soft enough on my caboose, but that's okay. We'll deal with that. Also, by the way, new addition, you will notice, I was mentioning this, my Slingerland 69 kit. New concert floor tom over there. Oh, it's getting so vicious. So it is all now complete. Redid all the heads this past weekend, so things are looking great. Okay, so in any case, why don't we go ahead and get started here. I'm gonna move over to Premiere, and let's switch over my screen. Okay. All right, so we're going to start with, this is the top new feature of the most recent Premiere Pro 23.2 release, and this is something that people have been asking for 16, 18 months, ever since the iPhone 13 came out and you could shoot in 10-bit HDR, ProRes 422, Rec 2020 HLG, and the issue was that when you took that footage directly into Premiere Pro, because at that time we didn't know how to interpret that just automatically, you'd end up with something that looked like this. And so this is some, I've been showing footage recently. I always just kind of go out front and kind of shoot some stuff. It's been real rainy and stormy here in the desert. And the other day we had some really beautiful clouds. So I thought, okay, perfect. I'll go outside, shoot some 10-bit HDR on the iPhone. And this is what it looked like. And mind you, I was in fact even adjusting exposure to bring it down a bit. And you could obviously see this does not look right? Now it looked fine on the camera, and that's the key, right? What I saw looked great, but this was how Premiere was interpreting it. And this is what you would see in the 23.1 and previous version of Premiere. Now this was not unfixable. You did have the ability to kind of manually, either via applying LUTs, or in the case of just doing some very basic color and light corrections in the basic corrections, obviously, you could start to fix this. And as we use our scopes here, you can just see these whites are just completely blown out. The highlights, the whole thing is just, we're just not interpreting things correctly. And there, if I adjust the exposure, now we're actually getting that detail back. So the good news with it being 10-bit and knowing that what I saw on the camera was somewhat properly exposed, as you can see, all that detail, all the cloud detail is there. It looked blown out It wasn't. Now, obviously, that's just an exposure adjustment. Granted, now we've got very dark shadows. We need to bring all that back. And then the color was still slightly off. It wasn't quite right. So this involved quite a few more steps to not only match, but really to bring the aesthetic that you saw on camera. And this has kind of been the major complaint, which is if you were new to grading, this was very, very difficult to do. And even starting was actually fairly difficult. Well, this is what we have now solved. So upon import now, you will now import your iPhone 13 or 14 footage or log footage. We'll get to that in a second. And it's going to automatically tone map that footage for you. So just to be really transparent here, so this clip, let's see, we're looking at 7273. So let me go to this one over here. I'm going to pull up some properties just that you can see. Okay, so here is our, here are the details of our footage. Sorry, Rec 2100 HLG. So here are the details of this footage, okay? Shot directly on the iPhone, nothing done to it, short clip, 24 FPS, HEVC 10-bit 420, Rec 2100, okay. And if you previously, to make this work, there were a couple things that you had to do. Again, one of them would have been to interpret the footage into Rec 709. You no longer need to do that. Again, just for those who've tried this and dealt with this issue, let me just confirm so you can see. I like to be very transparent with these things. This is one of the things you would have done before. Now, by the way, I'm not telling you to automatically just go update to 23.2 to make this work. You can still do it manually. All these other things still work. There's just this new thing. So again, I get it. I actually just did a poll on, not a poll, but a thread on Reddit about the frequency of people updating. And I say it on this show all the time. I don't update the moment things come out. I don't. I'm always doing something, and I just don't want to. There's other reasons to. I don't do that. I am not an early adopter of any update, ever. Really, ever. It's a few days at the minimum, but usually it's a little longer. In any case, there is no color space override. That's my point. Now, again, previously we would have chosen Rec 709. We don't have to do that anymore. We're keeping this native. All right. Now, what you want to do is you're going to make a new sequence. Now, we could make a sequence directly from this clip, but then it's going to make that sequence in Rec 2100. Now, you can still do that and change it after the fact, or you can make, a sequence this way, go into your settings here, and then what you want to just make sure is that you have the working color space set to Rec 709, okay? Now, we're going to come back to this auto tone map media. That's specific to log footage. We'll come back to that. Actually, I think it's for the sequence, it works the same for both iPhone and log. Maybe not. I'll verify. In any case, that's on by default. That's fine. So I've got a new timeline here, and it's called New HDR into 709. All right, there's nothing in there at the moment. And just to verify here, I'm going to go into these sequence settings. So just make sure. Okay. Rec 709, auto tone map media. Okay. And now I'm going to grab my iPhone 14 clip, drag it in here. I'm going to keep the settings of the timeline, right? Because it's saying, oh, do you want to make this Rec 2100 HLG? No, I want to keep this Rec 709, keep existing settings, wind this back, and voila. Looking much, much better. All right. So now minus our, let me undo all my changes here. This is what you got before. This is what you'll get now. This is where you had to start before. Terrifying if you don't grade or don't really know how to use Lumetri or just don't really know what you're doing. This is where you start now, where, again, now as I look at my scopes, I mean, we got to bring that exposure down a little bit. It was, it was a very bright, bright day. The point is we've got a lot to work with here, and now it's a little bit more intuitive as to what we need to do to make all of that come back to normal. Now, one of the things that I wanted to point out is, and I've already seen this online, and this is something that you will face at the moment. And this is coming directly from one of our colorists internally. There's not a standard for how all of these color sciences are managed app to app to app. So they all look slightly different when bringing in this content. Case in point. Now, I have a couple of couple little screenies to show you here. I don't want the QuickTime player. Sorry, I wanted preview. So this is just showing you. This is some footage that I showed you before. All right. So this is in 2022 our manual mapping. So this was, again, I've shown this footage a million times. This is kind of what this footage looked like with me trying to fix it manually. You can see these areas were just totally blown out. This was about as good as I could get it. I'm no colorist, so I really struggled with this. And this is what you'd get now. Again, I did this before it came out, so this is why I say this is the beta tone mapping. So right away you can see, one, it brought back a lot of the natural color of that sky, the building here. There's a lot more detail on the ground. You can actually see, oh, I'm kind of blocking it here, sorry. You can see, even though it is a little blown out. By the way, this is a little bit of user error. It was a bit hot. I didn't see how quite hot the sun reflection was on the ground, but you can still see all of the individual blocks and the outlines of them, which you couldn't see here, right? This was just gone. So enormous difference. And then this was what I saw on the iPhone. This was QuickTime, okay? So when you compare what we're doing now to QuickTime, again, look at the sky, look at the building color. We're doing a pretty good job of approximating almost the exact same look. It's not exact yet. We're going to get a little bit closer. There's some ways that we can do that. Some of this is using scene type detection for auto tone mapping. Some of that comes from using some of the Dolby Vision metadata. But we're going to come back. But the point is, this is where we were on the right. This is where we are today. And this is kind of the native reference. Now, just for additional reference, I know many of you use Resolve. I've seen this online in Resolve. And compared to what we did in the previous 22.0 version, this is what Resolve does. Now, I gotta say, while Resolve's is not as saturated, you know, take a look. Again, that blown out area, all the detail is there. All the detail is here in the foreground. Nice detail here. So, but compared to, again, you're looking at the upper left here, you'll notice that we're actually preserving a lot more of the color tonality. This one actually has sort of a greenish hue. And this is, by the way, their native. You have to, I'm not a Resolve user, so I had to go online to see, how do I import iPhone HDR footage? This is the standard workflow. You're linking things together. You're setting the color space. I did it multiple times. It works great. This is their starting point. This is now our starting point. Okay. So pretty good. Let's go a little further now. All right, so now that we've done that, here I wanted to show you that one of the things that you can do to get that much closer to the QuickTime reference is you can use color match as a way to sort of reference and A/B the changes. Now again, I'm no master at this, and this looks pretty good on its face by itself. I think if I bring the white level down here just a little bit more, you know, I'll probably bring back some of those clouds. It needs a little bit more saturation. I think some of those shadows need lifting a little bit more. Okay. Giving it slightly more film-like look there. I mean, I'd be somewhat pleased with that. Again, not my finest capture ever. Capturing just on the iPhone itself. So what I have in here is a reference shot from QuickTime. So again, this is what I saw on the phone. And what's interesting too is even the phone itself, I mean, this cloud was looking a little blown out. As we just saw moments ago with exposure, I can repair that still. But that's actually what I saw on the iPhone. So one of the things you can do is I'm going to pull this still into the timeline here, okay? So here's where we are right now, and here's kind of where we want to be. I'm going to go, and here I'm going to zero out this black and white for right now. I'm going to go into comparison mode, or we can access this via the color wheels and match section of Lumetri. So for those just tuning in, you always have the ability here to launch comparison view either from the panel, or if you have the button already down in your program monitor, you can see it here. So I'm going to go into comparison view, where we have our reference on the left and the current frame on the right. And the way that this works is you'll notice that the reference on the left has a scrubber. So I'm just going to scrub until I get to that still image, which is right here. By the way, I could have also just looked at the time code. Could have just set that based on the time code down here in the timeline. By the way, these are both, you know, moving fluid, as you can see. All right. I have that in full res. That's why it's a little laggy right there. All right. And I'm going to go up to color wheels and match. So now I have the reference that I'm trying to match to. I have my original here on the right side. And then we have one simple button, apply match. It's that easy. Now we have face detection here. This is really useful if you've never used this before. If you're trying to match, you know, specifically for interview footage, documentary footage, skin tone, it works really well. We don't have any faces in this, so I'm going to make sure to uncheck that box. And let's go ahead and click Apply Match. Now, look, like all things, sometimes it gets you right there, sometimes not necessarily. In fact, here, I'm just going to shuttle ahead a few frames. I want to kind of match. Oh, hold on. I got to move my QuickTime reference. I got to move this over now. I want to get to that same, not that that matters, but just for me looking at it. Okay, yeah, that's close enough. Right about there. Okay. Let's go ahead and click Apply Match. Okay. And it made some very subtle changes. Now, again, based on that screenshot, look, it actually sort of blew out the whites of the clouds a little bit. Now, as I'm looking at the greens, they look pretty good. Maybe some mid-tone contrast. I don't know. It looks like it's pushing it slightly warmer. So let me just see. I'm going to come to the mid-tone contrast slider here and see what this gets me. I mean, that's lifting those midtones, but it's also kind of brightening. Yeah, actually a little bit. That looks better now. There you go. I just impressed myself. So again, I'm looking at the wall sort of right here. Looking at the wall right here, looking at the green and the detail right there. These are pretty darn close. Now, my issue at this point is the blue saturation of the sky. So what I would do, now again, I can mess around. I don't think the color wheels are going to do it for me. I think these are actually pretty well set. By the way, I did this a couple times yesterday just to see what that result would look like. Sorry, my head's getting cut off. This chair is just too high. I didn't feel like moving the camera. I'll lean in a little. This is actually easier to achieve with the selective color curves, which we covered just a couple of weeks ago. And in this case, we're going to go with hue versus sat, which you'll recall allows me to adjust the saturation of a specific hue. Thank you, Patrick Palmer, for instilling that knowledge in me some years ago. So once again, I'm going to take the eyedropper here. And for something like this, again, the blue sort of, it's a gradient blue. So I do sort of want to find a midpoint blue. I don't want to find the lightest blue. I don't want to find the darkest. Something kind of in the middle, which could be something like this. Hue, let's see. I may need to reselect, we'll see. All right. Again, the amazing UI. Now, again, already looking at this, that's a little too cyan-y. Not a word. So that's not gonna do it. So let's make another selection here. Let's go to a darker blue. Same thing. I think I'm gonna eyeball it. Hey, like that. So I'm gonna set a couple of control points here. Move this over. And remember, if I hold down the Shift key, I can constrain so that I can't go left or right. And you can see I'm a little off. That's what I get for eyeballing. Big shot. So let's see. If I move over a little. And you know, again, my tolerance of how close it is may be slightly different than yours. So, you know, you are in control here. All right. Do I want to go Go super high there. Yeah, it's still it's a little cyan for me. But maybe. And then maybe just a little overall saturation. Now the other thing that we can do, hue versus luma, as I'm looking at these, let's go into this here. I'm going to pull down some of the luminance on those clouds. I'm going to come back up here. And also maybe just drop that and maybe do a little overall saturation. All right, now the blue is not exact. Again, colorists would probably be able to get it that much better. It's pretty close. Here is where we started. Subtle, but you can really see it in the shadows. Here's where we ended up. Started, ended up. It's pretty close. Now, was that extra steps to get it exactly what I saw on camera? Yes. Was it a lot fewer steps than it would have been previously? Yes. Did I have to be a grading master to do it? No, it really is very close. I'm very impressed with myself. If I do say so myself. Anyone can do this. This is why these RGB curves are so great. I mean, sorry, the hue saturation selective curves are so great. As long as you understand how they work. They're wonderful. And they can get you very, very close very, very quickly. So now when we play this, here, we get out of comparison mode. Oh, wrong button. Wind this back. Okay, let's mute this. By the way, there was an airplane flying. I heard it. I didn't see it because I was like shooting up into the sky. Hold on. Let's see. Oh, let's get this out of here. Sorry about that. Why is this? What's happening here? Oh, I turned the wrong track off. Oh, goober. Here it is. So there's a little airplane right there. Not an unidentified, what are we calling? Oh, unidentified aerial object. Is that what we call them now? We don't call them UFOs anymore. Right? Unidentified aerial something or other. I'll turn the sound back on. I was chasing it. I couldn't really see it in the camera because it was so small, but I knew it was somewhere right above me. And when we look at that saturation, let's go to QuickTime here. So here's the same clip. Hold on, I'm gonna shrink this down for a moment. What are we at? About 20 seconds in. So let's go about 20 seconds in. Actually, now I've oversaturated it a little bit. It almost looks like we need, it's too blue. We need to soften some of that blue. That's okay. We can season to taste here. My color expertise, not, you know? But this gives you an idea, all right? In general, on principle, I don't reject the look of this. Gino Marbella, don't start rumors now. Okay, thank you, Cody. Looks great, super. Okay, so HDR tone mapping, built in now. Makes life significantly easier. Now, a couple other things. You saw before the auto tone mapping option, and I mentioned that this also works for log footage. So if you're shooting Sony S-Log3, and you want to apply those without having to apply the LUTs. And by the way, there's a whole article on this and a video that you can watch if you're in these color spaces. This is an option that you need to enable under preferences. So if you're working with a log video color space, and this is off by default, by the way. So you want to, and it even tells you here. Let's see if we can get the tooltip to show up. Turn on automatically recognize log video with the appropriate color space. Otherwise, log video will be recognized as Rec 709. Now that's fine if you shot it in Rec 709, but if you're shooting it in 2020, 2100, whatever, then you're gonna have to do all that work manually again or reinterpret or do something else. So this will automatically recognize it in the appropriate color space. And then depending upon how you want to edit, right, you can edit in 2020, 2100, whatever, you need to change the sequence appropriately. But if you're wanting to display it YouTube, elsewhere online, Rec 709 is where it'll be the same workflow that we did here, where you can just change the sequence settings to reflect that. And then in those sequence settings, as mentioned, and it's on by default, which I confirmed, you'll see now there's this new auto tone map media checkbox. And then for the timeline in question, I want to work in sort of standard Rec 709. Here's where you do that. So it's a couple of little steps to be aware of, but in general, really nice, very simple. 99 LUT balloons, very good there. Reverb mic. Okay. All right. So now that is the main feature. Now, one of the other things that was pretty significant in this release. Can I make this bigger? There we go. So I show this, you're like, oh, it's a reset options at launch feature. Yeah. So this is something that we've actually already done, but now you actually have options when you do this. And you can read this here, but basically, if you've ever run into issues in Premiere where things got just kind of sluggish, laggy, sort of cache issues, cache is getting too big, you're trying to diagnose or troubleshoot app issues, one of the things people will often recommend, particularly on the Adobe Care side, sometimes our QEs. Now, by the way, I'm not saying do this. Always a little, caveat emptor when doing these kinds of things, especially if you're like mid-project, you have a million things that are cached, and you need cache files, and you have a million plugins, and you don't want to have to reload your plugin cache because you need to fire it up right away and play it for a client. Don't do this if you have something major coming on within the next 2 seconds, because this is going to take a minute, and then you'll have to rebuild these things upon launching. So just be aware, right? Now, if you hold down Command macOS, Control, and Windows when launching Premiere, this reset option dialog pops up. This was a direct user request. I believe this was on user voice for quite some time. And you can see you can reset app preferences. Now, I never do that because I like my preferences. But if you want to just kind of start from scratch, this is really good, especially if you're migrating from an old version to a new one and you really kind of want a clean start. You want to reset everything. I have moments like this where on older machines where I've had Premiere, I just want to, I don't want any of the crap I had on there. Just kind of reset everything. That would be a reason to use reset app preferences. Clear media cache files. Anyone who does a lot of work in Premiere knows, and After Effects, they have that shared media cache. But sometimes you need to clear them. Now, not always for troubleshooting purposes, but sometimes you do. The plugin loading cache, as I mentioned, this is in particular, especially if you're removing plugins. I actually saw a whole thing recently, both on the video side and audio side, where, and there's even a disable third party, one time only. That's interesting, one time only. You launch an old project and used to have something from Red Giant or something like that. You don't have it, or you do have it, but it's not compatible, so it errors out, or there's something like that. You can reset all of that. There's a number of different reasons to do that. So you uninstall or remove some element of a plugin because it tries to load it, but it just doesn't work or it errors out. There's reasons to do that. Now you have access to achieve those things. So it's a small thing here, but it's significant. If you've kind of experienced some issues. One additional thing here too is that upon firing up 23.2, this is something that I saw, and I got this dialog when I launched Premiere, initializing GPU, and it says please stand by for playback. So this happened when I updated to 23.2. It's required after new installations or driver updates. So this happened. I hadn't seen this prior. Maybe it happened before. I never saw it. It took a minute though. But I will say, once it kind of ran its course there, everything was great. So just be mindful of this. This is just something which I encountered and I thought, oh, that's weird. And it wasn't instantaneous for me. Maybe it will be for you. I don't know. But I like to point these things out when they do crop up, so to speak. All right. So, okay, so bear with me 1 second here. I'm going to, hold on. Just going to check something over here. right. Okay. Sorry, I just needed to check something on my streaming system here. Okay. All right. So the next feature. Now this is, by the way, and I should also mention, hold on, let me just go to my camera for a second. I should also mention that if you want to see the complete list of features in 23.2, just pull this up very quickly. You know, you can find this on the Premiere Pro, adobe.com, Premiere Pro pages. Hold on, I'm just going to pop this back for one quick second here. So automatic tone mapping right at the top there. Sequence locking for offline editing. Now, we showed this, actually, during my broadcasts with Abhi Singh when we were talking about team projects. So this is significant because, again, in terms of team projects environments, it's so much easier now to understand sort of the status of things. There's lots of new UI to indicate when someone's working on stuff, when there's changes. It's easier to update and to publish changes. We're going to get to language support in just a second here. There's those reset options. So like I said, and there's a lot of little fixes under the hood, as the saying goes. But you can find this on the adobe.com Premiere pages at the bottom. There's a, you know, what's new in this release. And then you can also see all of the subsequent what's news. Okay. So here we are, and here I have my friend Teresa's podcast. This was filmed at Adobe Max with one of our Express ambassadors and influencers, Phil Palin, super nice guy. And I went ahead and captioned this using our automatic captioning capabilities in Premiere. And just to remind everybody, if you go into the text panel, this is where you have the ability to automatically create a transcript. I'm going to create one too, just to kind of show you, refresh for anybody who's new to this. You then can convert those into captions. And then you have this graphics tab here, which we're going to get to in just a second. What that ultimately does is it allows you to kind of see any and all essential graphics in this panel, which enables you, if they have text, to do things like spell check and some other things. So really, really cool. Let me go ahead and dock this over here real quickly. So just real fast, let me play this back for you, and you can kind of see the captions in action as they are.
As a brand strategist, I help people position, build, and promote their brands. My focus is people. I'll work with companies occasionally, but I love working with people from all different industries, really from all different places in the world.
And he really means all industries. There is health, there is jewelry, there's real estate,
coaches, speakers, celebrities sometimes.
Okay. So, and by the way, if you've not ever seen how this works before, you see that it follows along in the panel. Again, it's very easy to come in here. If we need to change anything or make edits, you know, I can do that if I want to add punctuation or whatever, you know, whatever your desire for captioning. Super easy to do. And then if you want to make changes to the sort of style of the caption, that's where you go into essential graphics. Right. Now, the thing is, as many sort of I shouldn't say found out, but maybe we're led to believe, is that, yes, in essential graphics, you can change the text, you can change the font, you can change the style, you can change the alignment, you know, where those captions appear. And then you have all the appearance elements: fill, stroke, background, drop shadow, of which I have a very small 30% amount. And then you can also create track styles for those. So this is particularly useful if there's like a style that you want. As I've mentioned before, and I'll never stop saying it until they change it, we default to Minion Pro for our captions, which is the worst. It's the worst. It's the worst looking font. If I wanted to create something with a font that would set a typesetter off and make them just go postal or just nah, I would use Minion Pro. It's a terrible choice. I don't know why that's the choice. How do I really feel? Proxima Nova, some may love, some may hate. I mean, but by the way, what do I know? I'm not a type person, so don't listen to me. Enjoy Minion Pro. It's the best. Proxima Nova, this is actually very standard. You see this a lot in TikTok, where I don't personally, but I know because I asked. In TikTok, that's kind of the one that they use. You know, if you want to do whatever, faux bold or all that kind of stuff, you can do that. It's great, whatever, all caps, you know, you could do that too. Again, you have all these abilities in here, but what you can't do is you can't animate the captions. You can't crossfade between the captions. You can't fly something off or fade something on or twirl something away or, Lord help us all, you know, gradient wipe across them, because these are standard captions, which can then be fed, you know, into SRT files or part of closed captioning, broadcast exports, and all of those animated effects elements are not part of the caption standard here, which is a standard to some degree. So people have been asking, well, how would I do that? Well, the way that you would have done it before is, well, you would just have to create a new graphic by, you know, taking your text tool and clicking on here and typing as a brand strategist, and then, you know, same thing. You'd realign, and then you'd shrink the text down, whatever, you know, change the size. Oh, I don't have it selected anymore. Anyway, you would do all this manually, and then you'd go into your effects controls and select this, where you now have the ability to, you know, do all sorts of things to this source text and adjust, you know, position and opacity and do whatever you want to it in real time. So you can automate and change and animate. But you'd have to do all of that after you created those captions. Now you could say, well, I can copy the text into a caption block. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. It was a big deal. You wouldn't want to do that, especially if you had something very long. This is 24 seconds, not a big deal. You had a 5-minute piece and you had, you know, 80 blocks of captions or 180, who knows? I mean, hey, if you can charge for that time, more power to you. Probably continue to do it that way. If your time is worth a little more than that, it was a real pain to do it. So now we've made it super easy to take the captions as they are with all of your styling and everything that you've already done and upgrade to a caption, to a graphic. So effectively doing exactly what I just did with the text tool, but already including your text, your punctuation, all the things that are in there already. So simply by upgrading caption to graphic, and you'll see it's going to move, it's going to replace it in the timeline. So pay attention down here. Right now we're in the caption subtitle track. When I upgrade this caption to a graphic, you'll see that it moves it down to a video track, because now it's treating this like a piece of video, which, as mentioned, if we wanted to say, you know, again, at the most basic level here, we wanted to keyframe the opacity of this, we could do that like that, okay? Or if we wanted to, you know, fly it off the screen. So here, let's do the same thing. We'll do this one too. All right, and we can set a keyframe here. And let's set a position here. And then when it gets there, we can fly that off the screen. All right, you can see my amazing animation abilities here, right? Okay. Whatever you want to do, I mentioned before. By the way, it's very easy to take all of these and upgrade all of them simultaneously to graphics. Yeah, have it spinning in, exactly, you know. They might, in doing that, Gino, I may be removed from all video communities. Ah, what the heck, why not? Wait, what's one that's really, twirl, there you go. I'm trying to look for a longer block. Let's do it on this one. Okay, so I just applied a twirl to this. And maybe, again, we'll kind of set our twirl radius and angle and center there. But Maybe we want this to start up there. It's real fast, so okay. And maybe we want the radius to be like that, and we want the center. Oops. Just leave the center. Okay. You get the idea. Okay. So if you want to now animate in, that actually isn't the worst thing ever. I'm admiring my own work here. It's really easy. That's the point. So graphics and titles. Convert caption to graphic, and it's done. Now, one thing which I was curious here, and I didn't think you could, so you can't turn these back into captions. However, and I'm doing this live right now, let's see. So if I go to the text panel, this is actually super cool. So the transcription for the media file in question, which is the video down here, has already been done. It's done, it's stored in there, and as a result, the transcript, which by the way, in this particular example, you can see, and I'll run one for you in a second. I had it separate out the speakers, so because he's starting first, he's in this clip. Phil is speaker 1, and Teresa speaker 2. By the way, you can rename the speakers here, by the way, if you want to. But because the transcript is here, I can actually go back and I can say create here. So let me just mute this. I can create the captions. So here are all of the caption and styling options. Now, as mentioned, if I had a track style, this is where I would implement that here. I can choose my format. Okay, for what we're doing, we're going to use subtitle. Max length and characters. I usually like to bump that up a little bit. Minimum duration, gap between, if you want actual frame gaps between the captions. In most cases, they're gapless. And then if you want single or double line, I usually prefer single line. Go ahead and create captions. Get some water here. And now your captions are back. By the way, I just can't. What is this font? What is this with the drop shadow like that? What? Cody, somebody, are you okay with this? Is there just something wrong with me that I just find this so I find this like an assault. And again, I'm not a type. I love type. I love typography. But I look at this and I think, what is this? What is this? Why is this font like this? Meh. No one's answering in the chats. Thank you very little. Okay. So my point being is that you still, because you've transcribed, you can always bring those captions back. So even though there's no convert graphic back to captions, and that would make sense because you've added all this animation, it can't preserve that in the caption block. So, but the transcript is already there. So you could bring those back at any time. Maybe you want to get experimental for the client. You want to show them all of your various, cool ways that you're doing things. This would be a way to do that if you felt like it. It's so much cleaner. I'm not even saying that Proxima is great, but man, it's just clean, simple. I don't know. At least it's not white text on a white background like certain UTF. Yes, that's problematic. By the way, of course, it goes without saying. I didn't mention this, but just speaking of text color, this is normally a track style I do have. I'm not seeing this so much anymore. Has this stopped being a thing? But if you want to do the sort of, for a while Hulu was doing, I must change. Oh my God, good Lord, I can't even look at it. It's just, what's the other one I realized? Futura. It needs to be bigger. That. Maybe I'll do faux all caps. And that drop shadow. Oof. Just enough because it is on the background here. But Yeah. Anyway, you have full control here over how they appear. If you want to get very stylized, you can do that too. Up to you. All right? Sounds good. Okay. All right. So for our last couple minutes here, I'm just going to check some of the chats. See what's going on. I'm not seeing all of the... where are all of my chats in here? I'm not seeing them all. How is everybody on LinkedIn? Everyone doing all right? All right. Oh, whoops. What just happened here? I don't know what just happened. Hold on. Oh my gosh. I just got logged out? What? Okay. Well, that's good. Interesting. Okay. Well, give me a second. I can't... hold on. I'm going to go back to my camera for a second. I'll tell you what. I think I'm going to go back to native streaming through Wirecast. Oh, by the way, so next week, while I have you... We only have a couple more minutes. I'm not going to worry about this. While I have you, next week will be a replay. I'll be out of town next week. And then the following week, based on some customer feedback, I will be doing a... Interesting that I'm saying this now as I'm complaining about Restream. What's your streaming setup stream? So this is, consider it a masterclass in setting up a studio, some of the lighting options. People have been asking me to do this forever. We've been streaming for such a long time. I've had so many different configurations. And this would give me an opportunity to kind of take you around and just talk to all the gear and the setup. And by the way, as I've said many times, you don't need all of this stuff. This is from years of acquisition and owning studios, and it's taken me now 6 years just to dial this one in. But just to give you an idea of how it's routed, how it works, some of the things that I'm doing, the software that I'm using to do all of the mixing and controlling and scene shifting. There's a couple pieces that I can't live without, and anybody who's streaming, regardless of where you're doing it or what you're doing, things like some of these, Stream Deck controllers from Elgato. I actually just moved back to the 15-button version. I have the 32. It was just taking up a lot of space, and I made an excuse to have, I had like 20 scenes, but really I was only using about 15 of them. So, and actually, as I look at this now, I'm using 12. So I just thought, well, it's just taking up a ton of desk space. Might as well take advantage of the smaller ones. So, in fact, that is what I'm doing. So, all right, well, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to see your chats because I somehow got signed out here. So I will have to come back to that. Oh, Khaled Salama, studio setup. Yes, nice. Hardware and software, Anissa. Yes, indeed. Steve, that sounds good. Gino, sounds good. Yes, please. Oh, very cool. And the LinkedIn feed is ahead of the Behance YT feed. Yeah. There's all... the delays are slightly different on all the different platforms. Steve is asking, have I played anything recently on that drum kit? You know I have, and as I mentioned, now I haven't mic'd it up yet because I just finished all the heads, got everything tuned up. I hadn't tuned in so long that I needed a little bit of a refresher, so I'm always happy to share. So Rick Beato, if you don't know Rick, I don't know him personally. I've watched him on YouTube for years. He's a really interesting guy. He's been in the music biz for 25, 30 years, longer than I am. He's great. He has a whole thing. He's a drummer, among other things. Multi-instrumentalist, like yours truly. Checked him out to help me kind of refine the tuning. This is the perfect sonic combo. Oh, sorry, this camera. Perfect sonic combo of Ringo and Ginger Baker. I'm so excited. And of course, as I mentioned, all the cymbals are 60s originals, all the unbranded Zildjians. So, so much for my kids going to college, but I got a kick-ass set. So, whatever. I'm just kidding. So, anyway, so yes, Steve, I have. And when they eventually get all mic'd up, I will take some opportunities to, I was going to say tickle the ivories, wrong instrument, to eventually play on them. But yes, I have. I've been playing on them daily. Actually, that's replaced some of my acoustic piano. Usually give myself 30 minutes a day. That's my chill out, cool down time, get away from the screens. And it's been all about this, and it's been so great. I've been without, I haven't had a set of my own in 20 years. Yeah. And the last one that I owned was a Slingerland, which is so funny. So this one, and that concert floor tom, ooh, chills. Some people don't like concert floor toms because there's no head on the bottom. I was able to tune this. It is exactly the sound of Ringo's, if you know, you know, Ringo's floor tom in Sgt. Pepper. Ga-ga, ga-ga. It growls, and it's just this, the decay is this ga, ga-ga, ga-ga. It's it is the freaking greatest, If you're a musician and there's certain things, and everybody nerds out on their own stuff, right? Right now someone's going, oh, barf, go away. So certain sounds are just meh. And when you get them, you're like, oh my God, that concert tom, which is the 16-inch, it's just unbelievable. I have the 14-inch, which I think is actually the floor tom that he had. But again, Ludwig, Slingerland, a little bit different, doesn't quite sound exactly the same. I've got it. It's also very, very close. But the concert tom has the exact decay, and this is the best way I can describe it. And it just hits you in the face. It's such a wonderful sound. I can't wait to share it. Okay, that said, friends, I'm done ranting. Have a great rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. We're going to end a couple minutes early today. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend, and we will see you in 2 weeks on the next one. Until then, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.